Well, hello there, and welcome to another exciting episode of Secrets to Real Estate Investing by House Flip Masters. We have another woman on the podcast today, which I love when we have expert women to share their secrets of success with us. Because we all know this is a totally male-dominated industry. I find usually 90% of it or more is men, especially at the real estate clubs, at least in California it is. And I just get so excited when there's another girl besides me. So today our fantastic guest is Miss Whitney Nicely. And she's been called the queen of weird real estate in Eastern Tennessee. And she is going to share some of her tips for success that work if you're a man or a woman. So with that, welcome to the show, Whitney.
Thanks for having me, Holly.
So excited to have you here. Well, why don't you fill our listeners in by giving them a little bit of background about where you were and how you got to our today and what you're doing today.
I started flipping houses in 2009 with my parents. My mom has always been a real estate investor, and so I always knew that I was going to be a real estate investor, especially as a woman. Like, I had to do this. So I helped them flip. It was my first house. It was probably their sixth or seventh in 2009. And I fell in love with the process. I fell in love with the house, and I moved in it. So they didn't actually make any money.
I love it.
But they had a happy daughter, and they knew where I was. And I got to rent a house that, was pretty cheap for what it was. And they got a good tenant, and I could still call Dad when something broke because he was my landlord.
Nice.
And then in 2013, my brother and I had been buying houses like Mama always did, like with cash, the normal way. And we bought two houses. Well, we bought three houses, and the third one was a disaster. We sold it. We lost money. It was the only one that we've lost money on so far because we were just winging it, which is not a good idea. And so we had all of our life savings in these two houses, and I realized that we were never going to get ahead. Like, we were spending all of our money buying these houses, and even renting them, we weren't making any money. So I had to figure out how to buy houses without money, without credit, without the banks, and, get my life savings back in my savings account where it belonged. So that's when I found out about lease options, and I did my first one in the spring of 2014. So I've only been doing this for 3 years, but I've done over 50 deals. I've got 19 apartments. I've got 7 chunks of land, all that I've done with no money, no credit, no banks. I have to say, though, my apartments I did do with banks because I didn't have $300,000 and they were in foreclosure. So I do have banks involved on that, but I still didn't use any money to buy the apartments.
That is fantastic. And so many people that are looking into real estate investing, they're looking into it and they don't have deep pockets. They don't have $500,000 or $1 million or whatever to get started. So I'm really excited for you to share your special ways of success with no money. So which way are you going to talk about first?
Well, lease options are my favorite way, and I like to call lease options Band-Aids because they're going to fit on anything.
Nice.
If the seller is free and clear, you can do a lease option. If the seller has a mortgage, you can do a lease option. If the seller is over leveraged, you can do a lease option. I mean, literally, like, any way you want to look at a real estate deal, you can put a lease option on it. Even on apartments, you can do master lease options.
So why don't you tell someone who might be really new what the term over leveraged means?
Over leveraged is also underwater. It's where you owe more on the house than what it's worth. And this happens a lot. And it doesn't always have to be that you bought the house at the peak of the market. It could be that you had a house and you had some medical bills. And so you refinanced the house, put all your medical bills in because it was a lower interest rate to pay those off. Or it might be that, somebody convinced you to roll your car loan and your credit cards into your house. And now you've got this huge, lien on your house. There's lots of different ways that people get over leveraged. And then they turn around and they're like, oh, crap, now what are we going to do?
Right. And honestly, that can be a great strategy and idea for some people because car interest is not a write-off, but home mortgage interest is. So, I mean, it's really kind of good advice, and it can save you money too, because sometimes the rates are lower on a home loan than on credit cards and cars, and it's all write-off. But if you don't change your ways and you're still spending more than you earn, you get in trouble. And then what do? You call Whitney.
Exactly. And another thing that I would say too is people want to know if they're in trouble, who can help them.
Right.
And if you're over leveraged on your house, I don't know about you, but I don't know any agent that would touch that with a 10-foot pole, because they don't know how they're going to get paid. Right. They don't know that the house is going to be able to sell and have enough equity that they're still going to get their commission. So most agents I know are kind of like, that's cool.
Yeah, goodbye. Can't help them. I'm not getting paid, so they walk away, huh?
Yeah. And I mean, lease options are perfect. And people that are over leveraged are in a good position that they don't want to ruin their credit. They want to move on with life, though. And if you can do a lease option and roll all of whatever it is into the next, 20 years of their mortgage, they don't have to go through foreclosure or short sales or any of that kind of stuff. And you can buy their house and eventually get a house that you don't have any money invested in.
Awesome. Well, why don't you walk through the process with us a little bit of what that looks like.
Okay. So over leveraged, I've got a whole hour-long presentation on that one. So that'll be just the short and sweet. For the rest of this, let's pretend that these people are not over leveraged in their houses. They're just, normal people, and I call these people bridge people. A lot of times they get a bridge loan. So let's talk about lease options first. Okay. If you know somebody, or most people know somebody in their life that they got married, they had their starter house, and then they wanted a bigger, better, badder house, and they moved on. And then they even wanted another bigger, better, badder house, but they've got these old houses still on their debt to income ratio. They're accidental landlords. Like, they didn't plan on it. They just kept buying houses and moving on, right?
Uh-huh.
I mean, people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally cool. And I call these people bridge people because they keep bridging their loans. And these people could totally turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to rent my house. I'm going to lease my house. I'm going to let somebody move in it, and that's cool. That's normal.
Right.
Or these people could turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to sell this house. I'm going to put it out on the market. I'm going to let somebody buy it, and it's not going to be mine anymore. I mean, we all know people that have done both of those situations. So a lease option does both of those things in one piece of paper.
Okay.
You are renting the house with the option to purchase it at a point in the future for an agreed upon price today.
Okay.
So
tell us about a deal that you've done. And so you use this to acquire rentals, or is it for flips, or is it both?
When I do flips, I've done the whole gut in the kitchen and all that stuff, and I like to do lipstick on a pig kind of flips now. So I like to just do a $1,200 thing, or $1,500 and we get new carpet, or some little something. Maybe we paint the kitchen, not the whole shebang.
Okay.
Because you can spend $10,000-$15,000 and you can make $10,000 or $15,000, or you could spend $1,500 and make $10,000. And I don't know about math in California, but in Tennessee, it works better if you spend less and make more.
Definitely, yeah.
So that's what I kind of encourage my students to do, is the lipstick on a pig, the little stuff, the stuff enough to get it to go. And most of the houses I look at are pretty houses. They don't need to be gutted. They just need to be spruced up.
Okay.
So I had the very first house that I did, I was an agent for about 18 months before I had my first successful listing and sale, and I made $1,200.
Oh, so painful.
And, I was young and fiery, and I thought, I was going to be a millionaire and have a Mercedes by the end of the year. As soon as I got my license, it's just magic. It just happens. I know plenty of people, and it didn't happen like that. 18 months, I made $1,200. But when I started doing lease options, I got my first house on February 28th. It was from a couple who had retired, and then their daughter came home pregnant, and the house wasn't big enough. Their retirement house wasn't big enough for 4 people. So they needed to go, and they had a time limit. Like, she was about to pop. They needed to go and move on. So I told them that I would buy the house with a lease option. I'd rent it. I'd put people in it. I'm not moving into it. And, it'd take me 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years before I could actually cash it out and sell it. And I had it under contract for $122,000. So I put it out on the market, and they were totally fine with that. They were going to be gone in 30 days. I used to kick people out of their house, and now it makes me sick to my stomach to think about doing that. Like, there's too many empty houses in America to have to worry about kicking people out. So I don't do that anymore. This is my first one, so I made some mistakes. So I had it under contract for $122,000. I didn't have any payments due for 3 months. And on March, like the 22nd, like less than a month later, I had a couple who were moving to Tennessee from Chicago, and they were selling their house in Chicago and moving on down. But, you know, I didn't know the Chicago market. I didn't know how long it was going to take. So I told them that they could rent the house from me until their house sold, and then they were going to be cash buyers. So
nice.
In March, they gave me $3,000 to hold the house, to be first in line to do the lease option. And I had it advertised for $145,000 because that's what the house was worth. And they told me, they said, if we can buy this in 2 months, will you take $135,000? And I said, sure. I don't know what I'm doing. That sounds like $13,000. Fine. But they also then said that they wanted to rent it for however long it took. And so if it took 6 months, I was going to make $1,000 a month. And well, $1,000 a month for the first 2 because I had a payment due in 3 months.
Oh, so you set up your deal with the sellers or the people leasing it to you for no payments for 3 months?
3 months. I had no payments. So
and did you have to give them an auction payment?
I gave them $10.
What?
So that I had a vested interest in the property. I wrote them a check for $10 that day.
Okay.
On February 28th.
And no payments for 3 months. You are quite the deal maker, Whitney.
They were making the March, April, and May payments. I was on the hook for June's payment.
Okay.
Okay. So in March like 22nd or something, these people came, gave me $3,000 to hold the house as earnest money. And I gave that to the attorney to hold in escrow because I didn't know what I was doing with it at that time. And I still recommend give it to the attorney. Don't put it in your checking account.
Don't spend it.
Don't spend it. That's not your money yet. So they called me 1st of April and they were like, hey, we've had a lot of action on our house in Chicago. We're going to go ahead and start moving stuff down. So let's do this lease option and we'll rent it starting April the 1st. And I was like, it's $1,000 a month. And they said, fine. So they started moving stuff down. By the 1st of May, they had closed on their house in Chicago. And May 7th or something, we closed on our house. And I had my contract for $122,000. They were buying it for $135,000 from me, but they rented it, paid in advance for all of April and May. So I made $13,000 assignment fee on that spread, and then I made another $2,000 in rent because I didn't have any rent due. So for my first listing, making $1,200, and my first lease option in 8 weeks, I made $15,000. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a regular realtor. I'm going to do lease options.
That is amazing.
Actually, 3 weeks after that deal closed, 1st of June, I had another one closed. I made another $8,000. So
Woo-hoo!
12 weeks, $23,000. I was like, I'm in. Let's do this.
Yes, that is fantastic. That is awesome. How did you advertise that deal to that Chicago couple? How did they find out about it?
I put it on Zillow.
Wait, why are you making that face? Which I know no one can see it. You sound not happy about that. So would you not do Zillow again?
I love Zillow and I hate Zillow.
I know.
It is such a bittersweet relationship because it works.
Everyone's on it. I think it's got to be the #1 site out there. So
it works. It absolutely works. And as an agent, I hate the Zestimate.
Yes.
I hate the false expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But as a seller, I love it. I never put anything on the MLS because I don't need it.
Right.
And I don't need all those other agents up in my business asking me questions and trying to get paid. I'm not paying you. Go away.
I love it. I love it. You're so funny.
I'm kind of like the anti-realtor. I mean, my mom was an investor. We never used agents until I had a license, kind of like you. I got a license because my mom was paying these commissions. She was thinking about paying these commissions. And I was like, hold up. If anybody's going to make any money off my mom, it's going to be me.
There you go. Yes.
And then she bought one house. So
I love it. No,
I didn't get the check that you did, but I did get one little check for representing my mom.
Well, yeah. So those of you listeners, Whitney and I were talking before we started recording. I told her I got my real estate license because I have bought a house with a wholesaler that was going to resell for over $1 million. And it was not obligated to a realtor because my business model is and was, if a realtor brings me a deal, I'll try to buy it with them and relist it with them. Getting tougher on the relist, even though I still have one going that way right now. So since it wasn't obligated, I'm like, I'm not giving $30,000 commission away. I'll go take the realtor test. And I did, and I passed it. And I like being a realtor, but it's a whole different ballgame here for me than for Whitney. You know, California coastal real estate's a lot higher price point. So it's a lot more fun here. So if you ever want to do it again, come out here and join me, Whitney.
My bread and butter is anything between 75,000 and 150, and you can't buy a shack out there for that.
No, sorry, you can't. Well, maybe a shack, maybe a doghouse.
Well, I'll tell you, my next way to buy houses is owner financing, and I have a great story that I did last week on owner financing.
Do tell. Tell us about that.
I've moved in with my husband finally after 1.5 years of being married. We moved in together.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I haven't killed him yet, but there's still time. And we got this house, and we hired a yard guy, a yard boy. Okay. I don't mow, and I don't have time for him to do that either. We got other stuff to do. So I was out talking to the yard boy one day, and it turns out my yard guy has 13 houses.
What?
Had 13 houses.
Oh.
And I was just kind of joking with him. I'm kind of new to the area. I'm trying to buy houses. And I said, you know anybody that's got anything that they don't want, that they don't want to fool with, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, actually, I have 2 that you might be interested in. And so I went and looked at them, and they're little crack houses. And if you've never seen a crack house, it's not a house that a crackhead lives in. It's one that when you're inside, you can see outside through the cracks in the wall or in the floor, or, it's actually cracked like an egg.
Oh my gosh. I have never seen one like that.
Yeah.
I believe you though. And what causes that in Tennessee?
These are actually
and settling, or you don't have earthquakes,
in Georgia, right? And the first house that I got from him was because it caught on fire.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Yeah. And so on that house, I had it set up. He paid like $30,000 for this house, but his tenants caught it on fire accidentally, and so he got a nice insurance settlement out of it. So he was just going to let it rot and sit until I came bebopping through, and I was like, "Hey, you got anything ugly? I like ugly houses. I'll buy ugly houses." And he was like, if you'll give me $6,000 for this thing, I'll let you have it. And I was like, "Will you let me make you payments?" And he was like, "God, sure." And so I figured it up. It's like $200 a month for, I don't remember now, 2 or 3 or 4 years. And the way I do this, I don't give my sellers any interest because you got to pay taxes on that. So it was just a flat $6,000. I was sending him $200 a month from 90 days from now until whenever. I always get 90 days because there's a roller coaster that you got to ride to see how much you're going to be able to get out of this house. So, and I didn't give him any money, just $6,000. So it turns out that the neighbors next door wanted this house, and they called me and they were like, "Hey, how much will you take for it?" Because I had it advertised on Zillow for $15,000. Okay, I was thinking I could at least double my money on it, and $300 a month with however much you could give me as an option fee down. And they gave me $5,000 for this burnt house. And I put a picture of it on Facebook because I'm friends with this guy. And I was like, "I'm buying a house. I got an option fee." And he sent me a text message. He was like, "How much of that is mine?" And I was like, "Well, I told you I'd give you $200 a month." And he was like, "Well, you got a better option now?" And I was like, "I'll give you $3,000 and not give you $200 a month. I'll just cash you out for $3,000. And he was like, "This week?" And I said, "Sure, as soon as the title work comes back." So I ended up giving him $3,000, and I'm free and clear on the house. They owe me $12,000, and that's a good deal.
I think so.
Anytime you can make $9,000 on a $3,000 investment that I can keep for 2 years, so I'll pay long-term capital gains on it.
Wow.
I'm in.
Yes.
But that was the first house I got from him, and I am doing a lease option on it. So I ended up just cashing it out. The second house I have with him, I'm having no luck on. I've got it out for $10,000. I've got it under contract for $6,000. And I'm really thinking that because he bought this one at the tax sale, he put like $1,000 down on it. So even if I send him $200 a month for the next 2 or 3 years, he's happy with that. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to owner finance that one with him. I'm going to tear the house down and put a big giant pink Whitney Buys Houses sign up and use it for advertising in that neighborhood, because just on my little dinky bandit signs, I've looked at so many houses that I can make more money on by having just a lot over there where I can put my sign up. So I'm going to owner finance it for $200 a month, call it advertising, and go with it. It'll be free and clear in a couple of years. It's a lot better than renting a billboard.
Yeah. You're owning the billboard lot space.
Exactly.
Very clever. I like how creative you are, and you think about that.
Eventually get to be a big fish in a small pond over in that neighborhood where I'll own everything.
I love it. Take over the world.
One little neighborhood at a time. Exactly. That's
awesome.
What, when I started doing lease options and owner financing, everybody was running to one suburb in town. And so I went the direct opposite way.
Oh.
I went one county over and I did like 14 deals in 2014, only one of them in my county where I lived. But that way, when I came back to my county, I was an investor. I was, I had more or equal experience as the big boys, and I was more confident to come into those situations to say, I got a portfolio. Now I'm coming to your area. Watch out.
I love it. That's awesome. And listeners, Whitney's prepared like a really awesome, I'm going to call it a cheat sheet, little outline of what she's talking about today with some great tips on it that is going to be available to be downloaded on our site, which is actually, it's going to be at hardhatholly.com/45. That's Whitney's show number. So when you go to that landing page, you can download her awesome notes. And let's just talk about a few of your notes, Whitney, before we move on to your other strategy. So you're saying for the benefits for the buyer is you do 0 down, 0 interest. You don't need credit. There's no closing costs. And then it kind of leaves you open-ended for how many you can do with those options. And I haven't really met anyone doing 0 down. And I think you talked about like a $10 payment, so that there's actually some consideration changing hands. At least around here, I think we need to have some money. And I've heard people using $1. So do
Make
you
sure
always
it's a check,
do something?
though, not cash.
Oh, okay. So do a check so that you've got a paper trail, right?
Cash is king, except in real estate, because you need that paper trail. Whether it's $1, whether it's a $10 check, whether it's $100, whatever it is that you're giving them. And even if you give them money in 90 days when you start making the payment as your option fee down, make sure that's a check, and make sure that you've already gotten your money from your tenant buyers so that it's still no money out of your pocket to do this deal.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, and then you go through the benefits for the sellers being you can offer them their full purchase price. They get monthly income. They don't have to deal with tenants. They don't have to pay the realtor commission. So many people hate that. No headaches. And what do you mean by Dodd-Frank 3 per year? What does that mean?
Okay, so on owner financing, it has to be free and clear. The owner or the seller is financing you the property. That's how we get out of going to the banks, okay?
Okay.
And so they are, if you think about it, you are going on title as the mortgagee. You are getting the mortgage in your name, and they're going in the bank column.
Okay.
Okay, so they are the bank for you. Well, the government didn't want a lot of sellers to get out and start creating their own little, kind of little mortgage companies, because what if they weren't screening people? What if they were putting people into bad situations that they couldn't actually cash out? What if, people were taking advantage of the public? So Dodd-Frank is a piece of legislation. It actually works on a lot of different levels. Like your credit cards have to follow Dodd-Frank rules. Owner financing follows Dodd-Frank rules. I think student loans, there's a lot of things, but I only read the owner financing real estate section of it. And it says that you can only owner finance or seller finance 3 houses a year to the public.
Got it.
Now, there's loopholes in that. So if your seller has the house in an LLC and you're buying it in an LLC, it doesn't count. It's only when it's mom and pa to mom and pa.
Got it. Individual to individual. Got it. Okay.
And so your seller can only do 3 of those a year. So if they have 10 houses, technically they can only do 3 a year. Now, if your attorney cares, if your accountant cares, if their attorney or accountant cares, whatever. And like I say, if they've got it in LLCs, if they've got it in a corporation or they're selling to a corporation, you can still buy a 10-pack if you wanted it. I haven't ever done it, but I guess people can. But the other thing is that with Dodd-Frank, I tell my students, you can buy as many houses as you want to on owner financing because there's no limit to how many you can buy. There's just a limit to how many you can sell. But I never want you to sell. I never want my students to sell on owner financing because you're literally the bank. And if those people stop making you payments, just like a bank, you have to go through foreclosure. I always want you to sell on lease options so that if they stop paying, you evict them. It cuts the time way down. It cuts the headache way down. And
probably
it's
the
just
cost.
more flexible. Yeah. And, I screen all my tenant buyers. I teach my students to screen the tenant buyers, to what the law requires. But still, you don't know those people. And I don't want you to owner finance. I don't want you to get into a heavy relationship with somebody who's going to be paying you when you could do a lease option and it's still enforceable. It's still good, but it's not as heavy. It's kind of like a...
Like a what?
It's kind of like a prenup.
Okay.
When you're getting married to these people, you can go at it, owner financing. And, when you're buying with owner financing, you know that you're going to make the payments. You know what you're capable of. You know how much money you're going to be making.
Got it.
I don't want you to give that leverage to somebody else.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Well, I know we could talk even more, about this, but let's move on to your last secret weapon, which I love to do. And I've done it both on rentals and on flips, the lovely subject to method. So why don't you explain to our listeners what that means? Subject to what?
Okay. So when a seller still has a mortgage on their property and they need to move quickly, you can go in and you can buy that property subject to the mortgage staying in their name. The title actually transfers to your name, which could send a red flag to the bank. And the reason that you do it subject to is because there's a due on sale clause in the mortgage that says if title transfers out of their name, the bank could call the whole note due. And that is the biggest difference between subject to and lease options. And that's why I lean more heavy towards lease options, because title doesn't transfer. So the red flag doesn't go up at the bank. They have no reason to call it due. And a lot of sellers, a lot of attorneys don't like putting that kind of pressure on you, on the seller, or on the bank. So I know my attorneys in Georgia and in Tennessee always revert me if I want to do a subject to deal. If I go crazy and want to do one, they'll change my mind and put it into a lease option to protect me, to protect the seller, and to protect the bank.
Yes.
So I've done a handful, maybe just 2 or 3, before my attorney was like, you know what? It's just better if we just do these lease options. They're faster. They're more fun. They're just as, heavy. And title doesn't have to come into your name in case something bad does happen.
So what was your experience with your subject to deals? Did they work out for you? Did you make money?
Let's see. I've got one subject to deal. I bought it last summer, and I took over the payments at $68,000, I think they owed, and I sold it for $96,000 with $5,000 down as an option fee. And my first $5,000, if you give me $5,000 to move into one of my houses, that does not go towards your purchase price. That is just my fee for putting up with you for the next 18 months to 24 months. And if you put any more than $5,000 down, I will give you credit towards the purchase price. My payments are like $678 and some change, and I get $850 a month in rent on that. It's a 2-1 little dinky house, great little neighborhood. So I made $5,000 up front. I was making almost $30,000 when they get their mortgage in the back, and I'm making not quite $250 every month, but I'm still making money 3 different ways on that one.
Nice. And then what's your end game with that? Do you just want to hold it forever? Or do you want to sell it to the people living in it? Or
the lady that moved in October has called me. This is the 1st of April. She called me the 1st of March and said that she was going to be leaving.
Oh.
I said, sorry, I hate that. See you later. So she's actually out of the house now. I got to go to Tennessee and put a sign up and find somebody else to give me $5,000 or $10,000 to move in.
Nice.
And people do it all the time. I'll tell you, this wasn't a subject to that I did. It was I had a private money lender cash me out on the deal for about $60,000, and I had to pay the $60,000 back, and then I was paying them, I think, 10% interest. So I sold the house for $127,000 on a lease option. Woman gave me $40,000 down and paid 6 months in advance, and then left at the 7th month.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So I had somebody else move in it took me about a month and a half to get somebody else to move in. They gave me $10,000 down, and I, picked up where we left off on that. So I think by the end of 2017, I'll be pretty close to free and clear on this house. And I still am receiving 120 some odd thousand when these people get a mortgage. Or if they don't, I'll get somebody else to move in, give me $10, $20, $40,000, and maybe they'll get a mortgage and maybe they won't.
Wow. Do it all again. I love it.
Do it all again, every day, all day.
Cool.
The hardest part is getting the houses. And, I teach my students to get 5 or 10 years. That way, if you go through the roller coaster, you got 1 or 2 tenant buyers that come and go, you can make money 2 or 3 different times.
Yep. I love it.
And then you can either renegotiate with your seller and say, you know what, it was good for the last 5 years. Let me keep making the payments. Or say, hey, they got a mortgage and we're going to cash you out. I've only had, out of my 50 deals, I've only had 1 guy get a mortgage.
Wow.
And he had 24 months to do it, and he did it in 15.
He is motivated.
Mm-hmm. Only 1. And I've had, most of them boomerang and come back to me.
Right.
I have 1 guy right now trying to get a mortgage.
Okay. Well, we're getting near the end of our time. So with that, I always love to ask my experts, what's some of your best advice to somebody new that's either just starting or thinking of getting into this game?
You have to keep going. It's a good deal. It's a bad deal. It's falling apart in your hands. You have to keep going because you don't know what the next phone call is going to be. You don't know what the next seller is going to say. You have to keep going. And the only way you get really good is if you keep going. So
amen.
Keep at it. Even if, you're trying yellow letters and you're trying Craigslist and you're trying Zillow and you're doing Facebook and, you're doing all these things, you have to keep going. But you also have to believe it's going to work. Mm-hmm. If you tell me it's not going to work, you're absolutely right. And I will not argue with you.
Yep, because you'll find ways. Why
you will find ways.
You'll find reasons. You'll find the excuses. Oh, can't work.
Yeah. And you will exude that negative energy to your sellers, and they're going to be, coming at you with all sorts of questions, and you're never going to find the good, motivated sellers that I want you to find because you keep putting bad vibes out there. And you're absolutely right. If you don't think it's going to work and believe down in your heart that it's going to work, you're absolutely right, and I will not argue with you. I will not try to convince you that it will or that I can do all this great stuff because you're right.
Yes. I'm trying to remember who said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Jim Rohn, somebody else, maybe lots of people have said that because it's true. It's absolutely true.
It's absolutely right. And one thing that I always tell, when I started coaching, I was only coaching women. And that was because my slogan, and it still is, I teach men now. I didn't think men would want to listen to me, but it turns out they really like listening to me. And my slogan is Proverbs 31:16. I don't know how it is in your part of the country, but here we all want to be a Proverbs 31 woman. Like, that is the goal in life, is to be a Proverbs 31 woman, a virtuous woman. But in line 16, I use the NLT. It says, she goes to inspect a field and she buys it. She's a real estate investor, and every Bible study that I've seen, everybody that I've ever talked to about it, they just completely skip verse 16 because they don't get it. And that verse is,
that's your slogan.
Pillar.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Love it.
You've got to be, if you're going to be a Proverbs 31 woman, you've got to be a real estate investor.
Love it. Cool. Well, for those of our listeners that would like to be able to get in touch with you, learn more from you, learn about you, how do they do that?
You can go to whitneynicely.com, Whitney like Houston, Nicely like nicely done, or I'm on, I think, every social media, Whitney Buys Houses.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, we'll have all of your contact info in our show notes. Remember to get the download of her fantastic strategies and techniques, which I will attest to. I've used them all and love them all. And they work. They work if you work, right? That's how it works.
Yes. Yep.
You have to make them work. So if you want some success, definitely give it a try. So we'll have them in our download at hardhatholly.com. That's my podcast site. /45, and you can get Whitney's awesome download. So with that, thank you so much, Whitney, for being here. I love your cute little sweet accent. Don't hear enough of that out here in California. And your stories are so inspirational. So thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
All right, listeners, get out there and give it your all and go make some great deals happen. Hey there, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like it and click subscribe to get notified of more videos. And you can go to hardhatholly.com for a free download on secrets to finding great deals.